You love comics, and at some point, you've probably thought about getting into the business, if you're not there already. Well, what is the comic book business, and how can you start a career in comics? Well, I'm an attorney, author, and a business consultant who specializes in the comic book industry. I'm going to use this video to explain my perspective on the overall financial ecosystem of comics. Now, before you get into comics, it would help to define what the business actually is. For my purposes, the comic book industry is any commercial activity related to narrative sequential art. This definition includes not only the publishing of comics, but several related enterprises that do not involve creating or publishing any comics at all. There are two broad categories of the comic book industry based on the relationship of the business model to the intellectual property. Now, when I'm talking about the business model, I just mean the way you plan to make money. The intellectual property, or IP, is going to be the words and images that make up your story. In comics, you can make money directly or indirectly. I'll break down each type, then offer my view on how you can start a career in comics. Direct comic book career involved the creating and publishing of narrative sequential art. And there are basically three paths you can choose from for any given comic based on your control of the IP and your responsibility for the publishing. In independent publishing, you own the IP and you are responsible for the publishing of that comic. The upside here is that if there is any profit, it belongs to you. The downside is that the success of your comic hinges on the popularity of the IP and your ability to successfully manage all the different aspects of running a small business based on narrative art. Failure in either the creative or the business side can cripple the entire enterprise. On the other end of the spectrum, freelance comic book creators do not own any of the IP they create, and they don't have any responsibility for the publishing of the book outside of their commissioned input. This means that the risks are lower because you get paid no matter what happens to the book, but your potential rewards are also lower because if your story becomes the basis of a movie or a game, you usually don't get any of that money. Creator-owned publishing sits between the independent and freelance models. Here, both the risks and the rewards are higher because of financial success is tied to multiple factors. In theory, a creator shares the ownership of the IP with a publisher, and depending on both the popularity of the IP and the structure of the publisher's contract, the creator can see substantial profit from their work. However, if the IP isn't successful, or if the contract denies the creator any real share of the profits, then they may not be compensated for their creations, even if those creations make money. Now, these three models work together in a variety of different ways. An independent publisher will often hire several freelancers to work on a book and may offer creator-owned deals as well. At the same time, a creator can work freelance at the start of their career, land a creator-owned deal after their reputation is established, and set up their own independent company later. It all depends on your circumstances and your goals as a creator. The indirect comic book industry makes money from goods, media, and services related to comics without owning any comic book IP or publishing any comics. There are two major indirect models, licensing and investing. In the licensing model, you sell something related to comics because you got permission from whoever owns the IP. This could be anything from merchandise like t-shirts and toys to media like movies or video games. Depending on the popularity of the IP and the scope of the deal, comic book licensing can generate revenue that far exceeds any profit made by the comics themselves. In the investing model, you make money from comics in a way that doesn't require any permission from the owner of the IP. This could be anything from speculating on rare comics to developing an online comics distribution platform, to running a comics news or review site on YouTube, to organizing a convention or owning a comic shop or providing professional services to the comic book industry, or simply buying stocks or providing loans to comic book companies. As you can see, several industries leverage the existence of comics to make money. Now, there's a sixth business model that combines elements of all the others. In conglomerate comics, you control both the direct and the indirect business models as part of a much larger media enterprise. Conglomerates can leverage comic book IP into every aspect of commercial behavior for all age groups in almost every country in the world. From a business perspective, this is the long-term end game of comics that many new creators aspire to. This brings us back to the important question: how can you get into the business of comics in a way that makes sense for you? If you're a creative type, then you need to start publishing comics. Keep in mind, I didn't say creating comics. Creating comics makes you an artist, but if you want a career in comics, you have to expose your work to the forces of marketing, distribution, and of course, sales. If you're not a creative type, you can still be in comics. You just have to bring some useful business skills to the industry and seek out a niche that inspires you. Now, I hope you got a better perspective on what the business of comics is and how you can get into it. This video is sponsored by the Comics Publishing Institute. So if you'd like to learn more about how we help creators understand the legal and business aspects of the industry, you can click on the link on the screen, as well as watch more videos about what we offer on the channel. Until next time, have fun with your comics.